The center of our galaxy is dying. Astrophysicist Dr. Aris Thorne stands before the trembling Galactic Council, presenting terrifying new data. The supermassive black hole is not just growing, it is expanding exponentially, swallowing entire star systems at an alarming rate. Council leader Vorlak makes a grim declaration. This marks the end of our civilization, he states, unless we find impossible solutions. On the massive observation screens, the black hole's event horizon visibly churns and expands, a silent, growing maw of cosmic destruction. By the end of this story, you will understand how humanity faced an unstoppable force and rewrote the destiny of the stars. What seems like an end is merely the beginning of a desperate gamble, one that hinges on a species everyone else had written off as primitive. What does it truly take to stand against the void? A sharp crackle of displaced energy echoed through the Council's observation deck as space itself tore open. From the rift emerged the Odyssey, a vessel of human design, its hull scarred by journeys beyond known space. Captain Elena Rostova's voice, calm and clear, cut through the stunned silence. "We detected your gravitational anomaly from another spiral arm," she stated. Council leader Vorlak's many eyes narrowed, his tendrils twitching with disdain. "Your primitive species cannot comprehend this magnitude of disaster," he boomed, the sound vibrating through the chamber. "You have barely left your own star system. How could you possibly understand a threat that devours galaxies?" Elena's image remained steady on the screen, a faint, unyielding smile on her lips. "We have been studying the nature of black holes since the time of Einstein," she replied, her tone deceptively soft. "Your data is not a secret we stumbled upon. It is a puzzle we have been waiting to solve. Now, let us see it. This was not a request. It was a challenge, a direct confrontation between millennia of established alien science and the raw, unpredictable ingenuity of a species that refused to accept its limits." The tension in the room was a physical force, the fate of the cosmos hanging on which form of intelligence would prevail. The holographic display bloomed between them, a swirling vortex of crimson and violet data streams. Dr. Thorne manipulated the controls, his movements heavy with despair. "Watch," he murmured. The simulation accelerated, showing the supermassive black hole Sagittarius, a star not just feeding, but actively pulling in the surrounding star clusters. The entire galactic core, the heart of our civilization, will be consumed within 5 standard months. There is no physical barrier that can withstand that. Elena Rostova stepped closer, her eyes not on the terrifying scale of the destruction, but on the flickering energy signatures dancing at the event horizon's edge. She tilted her head, a scientist analyzing a fascinating anomaly. "Your sensor readings are picking up Hawking radiation patterns I have never seen before," she stated, her voice calm and analytical. "The particle decay rates are all wrong. This is not a natural expansion." Council leader Vorlak's massive form shifted, his tendrils stiffening with impatience. "What are you suggesting, human? That our most advanced instruments are faulty? That we do not understand the physics of our own doom?" Elena turned from the display, her gaze locking with his. "I am suggesting your instruments are working perfectly. They are showing you the truth, but you are not interpreting it correctly. This black hole is being artificially stimulated. The gravitational tides are being amplified by an external force. Someone or something is making it grow." The silence in the observation deck became absolute, a vacuum more profound than the void outside. The crisis was no longer a slow, inevitable natural disaster. It had just become a potential attack, and every being present now had to face a new and terrifying question. Who would possess the power to weaponize a galaxy's core, and for what unimaginable purpose? A low hum filled the air as crystalline data conduits connected, human quantum processors syncing with the alien archives. Dr. Kenji Tanaka worked in a state of focused intensity, his fingers dancing across a holographic console as streams of cosmic history poured into their ship's systems. The alien energy signatures were ancient, layered with the dust of millennia, but their pattern was unmistakable. Kenji's voice was sharp with revelation. The growth pattern is not random. It matches theoretical weapons research our own scientists abandoned centuries ago. We called it a gravitational lensing bomb, a way to artificially inflate a singularity. We deemed it too unstable to ever build. Council leader Vorlak let out a low, guttural sound, a mix of shock and grim recognition. The Krull Empire, they experimented with such technology, a desperate attempt to secure their borders. They are gone now, extinct for 10,000 years. Their ambition consumed them. It seems their ghost has returned to finish the job. But Elena was already shaking her head, her eyes fixed on a rotating schematic of the Krull containment matrix. No, she said, her voice cutting through the despair. Their ambition did not consume them, their error did. Look here, she highlighted a complex web of energy channels. Their matrix was designed to contain the reaction, but it had a fatal design flaw in its harmonic stabilizer. It creates a resonant frequency, a feedback loop that accelerates the process it is meant to control. They built a self-destruct mechanism into their own superweapon. Kenji looked up, a wild hope dawning in his eyes. That resonance, it is a vulnerability. If we can generate a counter-frequency, a precise gravitational wave pulse directed at the floor, we could induce a cascade failure in the amplification field. We could reverse this. For the first time, the oppressive weight in the observation deck seemed to lighten. The impossible problem now had a possible, if terrifying, solution. The question was no longer if they could stop it, but if they could reach the heart of the storm before the entire core collapsed. The objections erupted before Elena had even finished speaking. You propose flying a ship directly into the accretion disk. A senior council physicist, his carapace clicking with agitation, gestured wildly at the holographic maelstrom. The tidal forces there are beyond any material strength. Your vessel would be spaghettified, stretched into a stream of atoms before you even crossed the event horizon. It is not a mission, it is a spectacular form of suicide. A murmur of agreement rippled through the alien delegates, the grim certainty of known physics reasserting itself. But Elena Rostova stood unmoved, a calm center in the storm of dissent. She waited for the noise to subside, her expression one of quiet resolve. Your understanding of physics is correct, she acknowledged, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. But it is incomplete. You operate under the assumption that reality is a fixed set of rules, unbreakable laws handed down by the cosmos. Humanity, however, has always specialized in finding the loopholes. She turned to her own console and entered a swift command, observe. A shimmering field enveloped the holographic model of the Odyssey, a complex lattice of light that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. This is not a shield in the conventional sense. It does not resist force, it sidesteps it. Our ship uses quantum entanglement shielding. We tether our hull's quantum state to a protected reference frame outside the gravitational well. To the black hole, our ship is not a solid object to crush, but a probability, a ghost. It will perceive us as a superposition of states, allowing us to slip through stresses that would tear your strongest alloys apart. Council leader Vorlak was silent, his many eyes fixed on the shimmering model. The disdain in his posture had been replaced by a slow, dawning comprehension. This was not merely advanced technology, it was a different philosophy of existence, a refusal to be bound by the universe's apparent limits. The human solution was not to build a stronger wall, but to walk through the wall itself. The mission was still impossibly dangerous, a journey into the most violent place in the galaxy. But for the first time, it was not impossible. The entire galactic core now waited on the outcome of humanity's greatest gamble. The final hours were a blur of focused activity within the Odyssey's humming core. while alien engineers transmitted the precise coordinates for the Krull matrix floor, a point deep within the churning plasma of the accretion disk. Dr. Tanaka and his team worked furiously. They recalibrated the ship's experimental quantum dampeners, reinforcing the probability field that would be their only protection. Each adjustment was a prayer against the laws of physics. On the main view screen, Council Leader Vorlak watched their preparations, his massive form radiating a grim solemnity. The radiation levels at those coordinates, he stated, his voice a low rumble of cosmic dread, will exceed anything ever recorded in galactic history. Your shielding will be theoretical, your flesh will not be. Elena, overseeing the loading of the long, cylindrical resonance devices into the forward launch tubes, did not even look up from her readout. Her reply was simple, devoid of arrogance, filled only with a quiet, unshakable truth. We have prepared for worse. Humanity always does. It was not a boast. It was a statement of fact, a testament to a species that had spent its entire existence staring into the abyss and learning, against all odds, how to blink. The resonance devices slid home with a series of solid, satisfying clunks, the final pieces of a plan so audacious it could only be born from the brink of extinction. They were not just loading weapons, they were loading a single, desperate chance to rewrite a cosmic death sentence. The Odyssey shuddered violently as it plunged deeper into the maelstrom. Space itself was a roaring cataract of distorted light and screaming radiation. On the main viewer, colossal jets of superheated plasma erupted from the black hole's poles, lashing across the void like cosmic whips. Alarms blared as the ship bucked through a gravitational eddy, the inertial dampeners groaning under the strain. From his station, Kenji's voice was tense but controlled. Shields are holding at 78%, but the quantum fluctuations are beyond predicted parameters. The field is destabilizing faster than our models projected. Elena's hands were locked on the navigation controls, her knuckles white. She fought the ship's bucking momentum, guiding it through a labyrinth of collapsing star clusters. The viewscreen showed a stellar nursery being torn apart, newborn stars winking out of existence as they were dragged into the vortex. "We are not turning back," she stated, her voice cutting through the chaos with absolute clarity. "Billions of lives depend on us pushing forward." This was no longer a test of technology, but a trial of will. Every instinct screamed for retreat, for the safety of known space. But humanity had never thrived by playing it safe. They had reached the stars by sailing into the storm, and now they would save them by flying straight into the heart of the darkness. The Odyssey carved a path through the dying light, a single, stubborn point of defiance against the hungry void. A deafening roar shook the Odyssey to its very frame. The main lights flickered and died, replaced by the frantic red glow of emergency strobes. On the engineering console, a cascade of warnings flashed crimson. Chief Engineer Rodriguez slammed a fist against his panel, his voice a raw shout over the groaning of tortured metal. The primary dampener deployment system is offline. A massive energy surge just fried the magnetic couplers. They are completely fused. We cannot launch the resonance devices. The plan, a delicate thread of hope, had just snapped. They had navigated the storm only to be disarmed at the final moment. All eyes turned to Captain Rostova. Her face was illuminated by the emergency lights, a mask of calm calculation in the heart of the chaos. There was no hesitation in her eyes, only a grim acceptance of the new, more terrible path forward. She opened a channel to the entire crew, her voice clear and steady, a command that cut through the fear. "All EVA teams to the forward launch bay. Suit up and prepare for manual deployment. We are going out there." The silence that followed was heavier than the black hole's pull. To venture outside the ship here, in this maelstrom of radiation and gravitational shear, was a death sentence. Their advanced suits were designed for the void, not for the heart of a cosmic hurricane. But Rodriguez was already moving, barking orders to his team as they scrambled for the airlocks. This was the human contingency, the final, brutal answer when perfect machines failed. It was the willingness to put fragile, determined flesh and blood into the breach, to do by hand what technology could not. A silent, shimmering curtain of lethal energy washed over the Odyssey's hull as the airlock cycled open. Rodriguez and his two engineers drifted into the maelstrom, their figures tiny and absurdly fragile against the cosmic storm. The very fabric of space seemed to scream around them, a silent, violent roar of distorted physics. Inside his helmet, Rodriguez's voice was a strained grunt fighting against the calm static. Radiation levels are spiking far beyond safety protocols. The suits cannot handle this much longer. On the bridge, Elena watched the trio's vital signs flicker on her screen, a terrifying dance of red warning icons. She saw them wrestling with the massive, unresponsive launch mechanism, their movement slowed by the intense gravitational tides. Then it happened. A violent lurch of the ship, a sudden whip of unseen force, and the safety line of one engineer snapped taut and then broke, the severed end writhing like a dying snake. The engineer tumbled away, a silent scream lost to the void, pulled toward the event horizon's edge. But Rodriguez was already moving. He lunged, his own magnetic boots locking to the hull, one gloved hand snapping out to clamp around the engineer's wrist. The force of the pull nearly ripped him from his own moorings, his arms straining against the infinite hunger of the black hole. "We do not leave people behind." His shout was not just a statement of fact. It was a declaration of war against the cold, impersonal logic of the universe. It was the core tenet of humanity, the stubborn refusal to let a single life become a statistic, even when the cost of saving one could mean dooming all. In that single, desperate act of loyalty, he was anchoring more than a falling crewmate. He was anchoring the very reason they were out there in the first place. Rodriguez's muscles screamed as he hauled his crewmate back to the hull, his own boots straining against their magnetic locks. Every movement was a battle against the crushing tide trying to pull them into the abyss. With the engineer secure, he turned his attention back to the frozen launch mechanism. There were no delicate tools for this, only brute force. He slammed the butt of a hydraulic ram against the fused coupler, the vibration jolting up his arms. Inside his helmet, his breath was a ragged drumbeat. With a final, shrieking grind of protesting metal, the first resonance device broke free, tumbling from its housing. He watched it drift away, a silent, cylindrical torpedo aimed at the heart of the storm. "Device 1 is away," he reported, his voice thin with exhaustion. The team watched their scopes, the entire bridge holding its breath. For a long moment, nothing changed. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer passed through the violent energy readings at the event horizon. The black hole's exponential growth rate stuttered just for a second, like a skipped heartbeat. Rodriguez's next transmission was grim. "Device 1 is active." But we are reading only a marginal effect on the black hole's growth. It is still expanding. On the bridge, Elena studied the incoming data, her face illuminated by the cold light of the display. The numbers were clear. A single pulse was not enough. It was like trying to stop a collapsing dam with a single grain of sand. She opened the comms channel to the EVA team, her voice calm yet urgent, a steady anchor in the rising panic. "We need all 12 dampeners working in concert," she stated. "Their resonance waves must overlap perfectly to create a stable counter-frequency." This was only the first test. The plan had always been a symphony, not a solo. Now, with their systems failing and the gravity well intensifying its pull with every passing second, they had to manually conduct the rest of the performance from outside the ship, a single mistake dooming them all. The second resonance device was almost in position when space itself fractured around them. 3 vast crystalline warships shimmered into existence, their angular hulls radiating a cold, ancient light. They formed a perfect triangle around the battered Odyssey, blocking any line of retreat. A voice, dry and rasping like stones grinding together, echoed through the bridge comms. "Cease your interference, little creatures. The great hunger must be fed." Captain Rostova's blood ran cold. Her eyes darted from the new threat on the viewscreen to the frantic energy readings of the black hole, then back to the alien warships. The pieces of an impossible puzzle clicked into place with terrifying clarity. Her voice was a whisper of pure revelation. "You are not extinct, you never were. You have been controlling its growth. You are the architects of this. The crisis was not a tragic accident or a ghost from the past. It was a deliberate, ongoing act." The Krull had not been consumed by their own weapon. They had learned to master it, to use the supermassive black hole as a tool, a cosmic engine, or perhaps a god they believed needed constant sacrifice. The mission had just transformed from a rescue operation into a confrontation with the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilization, and they were not pleased that their divine work was being interrupted. The Krull commander's voice was a dry rasp of cosmic age. "For millennia we waited in the void, our essence preserved within the quantum foam, growing our strength through the singularity's bounty. This is not destruction, it is our harvest, it is our resurrection." On the Odyssey's bridge, Elena Rostova stood facing the viewscreen, her posture rigid. The terrifying scale of their plan unfolded in her mind. They were not just feeding the black hole, they were using it as a cosmic battery, siphoning the very energy of dying stars and collapsing matter to rebuild their empire from nothing. Entire civilizations born and thriving around the galactic core were nothing more than fuel for their furnace. "You are destroying countless lives," she said, her voice low and sharp as a blade. "You are erasing history and hope for your own survival. Humanity will not allow that." It was a declaration that seemed laughable in the face of 3 ancient warships and a weaponized galaxy. But it was not a statement of power, it was a statement of principle. This was no longer a battle of technology, but a clash of fundamental truths. The Krull saw the universe as a resource to be consumed for their own continuity. Humanity saw it as a community to be protected, a tapestry of life whose threads were all sacred. The moral line was drawn not in the space between the ships, but in the very nature of their existence. The Odyssey banked hard, a cascade of emerald energy bolts screaming past its viewscreen. The Krull warships moved with a chilling, synchronized precision, their weapons fire carving through space where the human vessel had been just moments before. Shields failing on the port side, Kenji called out, his voice tight. A direct hit would vaporize them. Elena's eyes were locked on the main tactical display, her mind racing not away from the terrifying maw of the black hole but directly toward it. "Use the black hole's gravity well," she commanded, her voice cutting through the alarm klaxons. "Slingshot around the event horizon and come up behind them." It was a maneuver so reckless no other species would have conceived of it. To use the galaxy's most destructive force as a shield, as a pivot point for an attack, was pure human insanity. The ship groaned in protest as the helmsman threw them into the dive, the forward view becoming a swirling vortex of distorted stars and hungry darkness. The Krull, bound by their ancient logic, had assumed their prey would flee outward into open space where they could be easily cornered. They never anticipated a foe that would use the very jaws of death as a tactical advantage. The Odyssey plummeted into the gravitational whirlpool, a leaf caught in a cosmic drain, only to be whipped around the very edge of oblivion and flung back out with terrifying velocity, emerging suddenly and impossibly behind the baffled Krull formation. In that single, breathtaking move, Elena Rostova had turned their greatest weapon against them. The 6th and final resonance device slid home with a satisfying, solid clunk. For a moment, the only sound was the frantic hum of the Odyssey's overstressed systems. Then a deep, harmonious thrum began to build, a vibration felt in the bones more than heard by the ears. On the main viewer, the violent, chaotic churning at the event horizon's edge began to slow, the frantic whirlpool of matter calming into a more stately, predictable rotation. The exponential growth curve on the tactical display flattened, then began a slow, steady decline. From his science station, Kenji's voice was electric with triumph. The resonance field is stable. All 6 dampeners are functioning in perfect harmony. The Krull control signal is weakening. Their grip on the singularity is failing. Across the void, the response from the lead Krull warship was immediate and furious. The commander's voice, once a dry rasp of absolute certainty, now crackled with something entirely new, something these ancient beings had likely not felt in millennia, raw and undiluted panic. Impossible. Your primitive patchwork technology should not be able to affect our mastery of singularities. We have spent 10,000 years perfecting this art. This was not merely a technological defeat, it was a philosophical earthquake. The Krull believed their mastery was absolute, built on eons of accumulated knowledge and power. They never accounted for a species that did not seek to master the universe's laws, but to politely ask them to step aside. Human innovation was not about building a bigger hammer. It was about understanding the fundamental nature of the nail and realizing you could simply turn it into something else. The resonance field held a fragile web of human ingenuity woven directly into the fabric of a supermassive black hole, proving that the newest players on the galactic stage had just rewritten the oldest rules. The lead Krull warship's crystalline hull began to glow with a terrible, incandescent light. It was not the cold blue of their weapons, but a furious, building crimson, a star-going supernova under forced confinement. From the engineering station, Rodriguez's voice was a sharp crack of alarm. They are overloading their power cores. This is not an attack run. It is a self-destruct protocol. The blast wave from even one of them will rip our resonance field apart. Everything we just built will shatter. For a horrifying second, the calculus of the situation was absolute. They could not outrun the blast, and they could not withstand it. Their perfect, delicate solution was about to be undone by a final, spiteful act of annihilation. But Elena Rostova did not freeze. Her mind, forged in 1,000 lesser crises, calculated the one path the Krull, in their ancient pride, would never predict. Her command was instantaneous, a razor of intent slicing through the panic. All power, every last joule to the forward shields. Cut life support, reroute from weapons, from engines. We are not going to evade them, we are going through them. It was a decision that defied every tactical manual. It was the ultimate human gamble, turning their ship from a vessel into a battering ram, trusting that a shield concentrated into a single, forward-facing blade could pierce the heart of a dying star. The Odyssey surged forward, a silver dart aimed directly at the glowing heart of the lead Krull ship. A final, desperate race to reach the other side of the explosion before it could fully form. The Odyssey tore through the heart of the detonating Krull ship like a spear through a dying sun. A cataclysmic roar of light and shrapnel enveloped them, the view screen overloading into a solid sheet of white static. The ship bucked and screamed, the sound of rending metal echoing through the decks like a death rattle. When the light faded, the screen resolved to show a field of glittering crystalline debris, the remains of the lead warship scattering into the void. But their victory was Pyrrhic. Alarms shrieked with a new, desperate urgency. Hull breaches on decks 3, 7, and 9, Kenji reported, his voice strained as he fought to stabilize the failing systems. Atmospheric containment is failing. Primary power is offline. We are running on batteries. On the main viewer, the 2 remaining Krull warships hung in the distance, momentarily stunned by the suicidal audacity of the maneuver. Elena gripped her command chair, her knuckles white, her face illuminated by the frantic red glow of damage reports. Her eyes were not on the dying systems or the enemy ships. They were fixed on the 5 remaining green icons on a tactical display, the resonance dampeners still miraculously intact. "We have 5 dampeners left," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with an unnerving calm. "We finish this no matter what." It was a statement that defied the mangled state of their ship, the loss of atmosphere, the flickering lights. It was the core of human resolve, the refusal to let a little thing like catastrophic failure stand in the way of the mission. The Odyssey, wounded and bleeding air, turned its broken nose back toward the black hole, a predator still focused on its prey. Metal shrieked as the Odyssey's hull twisted under forces it was never meant to endure. "Gravity is tearing us apart," Rodriguez screamed over the blare of structural alerts, his voice raw. Entire sections of the outer armor peeled away, vanishing into the swirling darkness below. Elena's hands flew across the console, her face a mask of intense concentration. She ignored the warnings, her focus absolute on the shimmering coordinates of the next deployment point. "We are humans," she stated, her voice a low, steady counterpoint to the chaos. "We bend physics to our will when necessary." The ship groaned, diving into a spiraling river of superheated gas, a cosmic waterfall pouring into the abyss. She rode the current, using the very forces trying to destroy them as a slingshot, flinging the vessel toward a tiny pocket of relative calm. In that fleeting moment of stability, the seventh resonance device launched, a silver dart finding its mark in the storm. They had no time to celebrate. Elena was already wrenching the ship into another violent turn, the inertial dampeners failing completely now, pressing the crew deep into their seats. The eighth dampener flew from its tube, tumbling end over end before its stabilizing thrusters ignited, carving a perfect arc through the maelstrom to join its partner. Two more points of light now shone in the oppressive dark, their harmonic thrum joining the chorus, steadily tightening a noose of human ingenuity around the throat of a god. The ninth dampener jammed halfway out of its launch tube, its casing glowing with a sickly orange light. A sharp, discordant whine pierced the ship, a sound of physics tearing itself apart. "The resonance field is collapsing," Kenji reported, his voice thick with horror. "The stable harmonic we built is unraveling." On the main viewer, the black hole's event horizon, which had been calming, began to churn with renewed, violent intensity. The Krull warships, sensing the shift, pressed their attack, their weapons' fire streaking closer. Elena's mind raced through the catastrophic data, discarding one impossible solution after another. Then her eyes locked on the ship's own core, the experimental jump drive that had brought them here. Her voice was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos. "We cannot fix the dampener in time. The field needs a new anchor, a new source of immense, localized gravity to replace the one we lost. We have to create an artificial singularity, using our jump drive as the power source." The silence on the bridge was absolute, broken only by the scream of overload alerts. To even suggest such a thing was to propose tearing a hole in reality inside their own ship, using the very engine that was their only chance of ever leaving this place. It was a solution born not from established science, but from a desperate human refusal to accept defeat. Council Leader Vorlak's voice, patched through the comms, was a stunned whisper. "You would become the very thing you are fighting to contain. The power required would vaporize your vessel. You are speaking of a controlled suicide." Elena's reply was immediate, her gaze fixed on the failing field. "No, we are speaking of a controlled sacrifice. The drive is already failing. We can channel its core breach, shape the detonation into a momentary gravitational point. We are not creating a new black hole. We are creating a temporary stitch to close a wound in the galaxy." It was a gamble that redefined the word, a plan that treated a star drive not as a piece of machinery, but as a single, catastrophic bullet to be fired into the heart of a physics problem. The only question was whether the suture would hold, or if their final act would simply add more fuel to the fire. Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge, calm and certain. "I can trigger the overload manually from engineering. The timing has to be perfect." Elena spun toward the comms, her protest immediate and fierce. "The radiation spike will be fatal. You will be trapped down there." There was no hesitation in his reply, only a quiet, unshakable resolve. "Some things are worth dying for, Captain. Saving the galaxy definitely qualifies." In that moment, the theoretical became painfully personal. This was not about machinery or physics. It was about a choice, a single human being standing at the precipice and deciding that the lives of billions, the future of the galactic core itself, were worth the ultimate price. It was the final, brutal contingency of a species that had always understood a terrible truth, that some victories could not be won without a cost written in blood. Without another word, Rodriguez severed the comms link from his end, the finality of the click echoing in the sudden silence. The bridge crew watched, frozen, as his life sign indicator moved with deliberate speed toward the roaring heart of the failing jump drive, a man walking directly into a star to give them all a chance. The shriek of tearing metal became a constant roar as the remaining Krull warships unleashed their full fury. Emerald bolts of energy slammed into the Odyssey's battered hull, each impact shaking the vessel like a toy in a hurricane. Elena gripped her console, her mind split between two fronts. On her left screen, the tactical display showed the enemy closing in for the kill. On her right, the delicate harmonic alignment of the resonance dampeners flickered, a house of cards in a gale. Her commands were swift and precise, a conductor orchestrating a symphony of survival and destruction, all remaining power to port shields. Helm erratic maneuvers keep them guessing. Kenji, I need that 9th dampener's frequency stabilized now. We are running out of time. From the engineering deck, Rodriguez's voice cut through the cacophony, calm and measured, a stark contrast to the violence surrounding them. 30 seconds to jump drive overload. The core containment field is already buckling. The lead Krull commander's face reappeared on the main viewer, his crystalline features contorted with a mix of fury and disbelief. You are insane, he rasped, the sound like grinding glass. You will tear a hole in space-time. You will destroy yourselves along with us. There is no logic in this. Elena's eyes met his on the screen, her expression not one of anger, but of profound, unshakable certainty. Her reply was quiet, yet it carried the weight of her entire species' history. Humanity understands calculated risks better than you think. For us, logic has never been about pure survival. It has always been about what is worth surviving for. To the Krull, the sacrifice was a chaotic, illogical end. To her, it was the final, necessary equation in a very long and deliberate calculation. The countdown in her ear continued, a steady beat marching towards zero, while outside, the two ancient philosophies of existence prepared for their final fiery collision. The ship convulsed as the final dampeners fired, their silver cylinders spiraling into the churning heart of the vortex Rodriguez had created. For a single, breathless second, nothing happened. Then the universe seemed to exhale. All dampeners are active, Kenji shouted over the shriek of buckling metal, his voice cracking with a desperate hope. The resonance field is stabilizing. On the main viewer, a silent, blinding flower of pure white energy bloomed where the artificial singularity had been. It was not an explosion of destruction, but a release, a cosmic reset button pressed at the precipice of annihilation. The violent, unnatural churn of the black hole's event horizon hit an invisible wall. The exponential growth curve on the tactical display did not just slow, it reversed, collapsing inward as the Krull's 10,000-year amplification field was systematically shredded by the harmonic counter frequency. The two remaining Krull warships, caught in the backwash of the energy release, flickered and destabilized, their ancient systems overwhelmed by the very physics they had sought to command. They did not explode, they simply unraveled, their crystalline structures dissolving into clouds of inert, glittering dust, their terrifying purpose finally and utterly erased. The Odyssey hung in the sudden, profound silence, a broken husk surrounded by the calming tides of a galaxy no longer screaming in pain. They had done it. They had fixed the growing black hole, but the cost of that victory was written in the static-filled silence from the engineering deck and in the cold, airless dark slowly creeping into the bridge. The wave of silent energy passed, leaving the Odyssey drifting in a sea of unnatural calm. Emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows across the bridge, illuminating the floating debris and the smoke still curling from shattered consoles. Scanners, miraculously still online, painted a new reality across the main viewer. The chaotic, violent churn of the black hole had ceased, replaced by a steady, rhythmic pulse. The event horizon was no longer a hungry, expanding maw, but a stable boundary, already beginning the slow, natural process of contraction. Then a voice, thick with static and something akin to awe, broke through the calms. It was Council Leader Vorlak. "The growth has stopped," he said, the words weighted with the gravity of 10,000 years of dread. "You have done the impossible." All across the bridge, the crew remained still, the magnitude of their victory not yet piercing the fog of their exhaustion and loss. Elena Rostova did not look at the viewer. Her gaze was fixed on the empty engineering station, where Rodriguez's vital signs had flatlined into final, silent testimony. Her own voice was soft, yet it carried to every corner of the silent bridge. "The cost was high," she said, "but the galaxy is safe." It was not a celebration. It was a eulogy and a promise spoken over the grave of a friend. In that moment, the true nature of humanity's triumph became clear. It was not measured in the megatons of energy they had redirected, or in the defeat of an ancient enemy. It was measured in the quiet, willing sacrifice of one person who believed a universe of strangers was worth everything. The Odyssey, broken and scarred, was not just a ship anymore. It was a monument to the idea that the most powerful force in the cosmos is not gravity, but the choice to stand against it for the sake of others. The observation deck was utterly silent, a profound stillness that felt heavier than the void itself. Every screen in the Galactic Council's chamber was fixed upon the image of the broken Odyssey, its whole scarred and venting atmosphere, a silent testament to the battle it had endured. Then a single, resonant sound broke the quiet, the slow, deliberate clap of Council Leader Vorlak's massive appendages. It was a gesture alien to his kind, yet its meaning was unmistakable. One by one, the other delegates joined in, a rising wave of percussive respect that echoed through the vast chamber. Vorlak's voice, once filled with disdain, now resonated with a humbled, somber gravity. "We owe you and your fallen an unpayable debt. We gravely underestimated your species, not merely for your reckless ingenuity, but for your profound capacity for sacrifice. You are heroes of the galaxy." On the Odyssey's fractured viewscreen, Elena Rostova stood amidst the wreckage of her bridge, her face smudged with soot and etched with a grief too deep for words. She listened to the accolade, her posture unwavering, but her eyes held no triumph. When she spoke, her voice was soft, yet it carried across the stars with the force of a fundamental truth. "We did not do this for recognition or for a place in your histories. We did it because it was the right thing to do. There was no other choice to make." In that simple, unadorned statement, the entire galactic community understood the core of humanity's nature. While other species sought power or preservation, humanity's most powerful drive was a stubborn, unyielding moral compass, a belief that some lines should never be crossed, no matter the cost. The crew of the Odyssey had not just saved a galactic core, they had introduced a new and powerful principle into the cosmos, the idea that true strength is found not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to protect. For weeks, the galactic core became a living laboratory. Scientists from 100 species descended upon the stabilized black hole, their instruments humming with a new kind of curiosity. They were not studying a predator anymore, but a marvel of cosmic engineering. The human resonance dampeners, still pulsing with their gentle harmonic thrum, had not merely arrested the black hole's growth. They had coaxed it into a state of perfect, efficient equilibrium. The terrifying jets of plasma were gone, replaced by a steady, manageable outflow of pure Hawking radiation. One of the lead physicists, a being of shimmering light, presented the findings to the Council with palpable excitement. "The energy output is cleaner and more stable than anything we have ever recorded from a singularity. The humans have not just contained a threat, They have perfected a power source. Council leader Vorlak absorbed the data, the implications settling deep within him. He looked across the chamber to the holographic image of Elena Rostova, who was overseeing the slow, painstaking repairs to the Odyssey. "Your resonance technology," he began, his voice filled with a newfound reverence. "It could power entire civilizations for millennia. It offers abundance without annihilation. It is the key to a future we never dared to envision." Elena met his gaze, her own expression clear and resolute. "Humanity believes in lifting others up," she stated, her words simple and direct. "We do not seek to control through fear or hoard knowledge as a weapon. The technology is yours. We will share everything we know." The contrast with the Krull philosophy could not have been more stark. The ancient empire had seen the universe as a larder to be plundered for their own solitary survival. Humanity saw it as a garden to be tended, a shared home where the success of one could nourish the success of all. In offering the very technology that had saved them, they were not just giving a blueprint for power. They were extending an invitation to build a better galaxy together, one where progress was measured not in conquest but in collective light. The battered Odyssey limped home, its hold now filled with alien ambassadors from species once considered only myths. Their presence was a living promise, the first threads of a new interstellar alliance woven from the fabric of shared survival. Standing on her repaired bridge, watching the blue marble of Earth grow in the viewscreen, Captain Elena Rostova felt the weight of the long journey settle upon her. She thought of Rodriguez and of the terrible cost etched into their ship's scarred hull. Her reflection was not one of triumph, but of quiet, sober understanding. The black hole was growing until humans fixed it, she mused, her voice soft for the ship's log. But not because we are superior. It was because we alone, in that critical moment, combined raw courage with profound compassion. We valued the whole over the self. The final transmission from the Galactic Council still glowed on a secondary screen, a single, resonant sentence that seemed to capture everything. Humanity's greatest strength is not our technology. It is our unwavering belief that no problem is too great to solve when we work together. The words hung in the air, a beacon not just for the stars, but for the people of Earth below. It was a reminder that our potential is limitless when we direct our ingenuity not toward domination, but toward connection, turning even the darkest voids into places where new light can be born.